Set. Ready? Ed and Kurt. We're on. You guys ready? Okay. Good morning, and welcome to Forum 360's panel on Putting the E in STEM, where we're going to focus on engineering education, one component of the broader conversation around science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM education. My name is Meredith Drosbeck, and I am the Assistant Director for Education and Physical Sciences at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. With me today, I have four very distinguished panelists whose expertise includes both formal and informal, or outside of the classroom, education at both the kindergarten through 12th grade, or K-12, and undergraduate levels. I'll introduce them to you shortly, but first I wanted to say a few words about STEM and engineering education more broadly. I think we all know that STEM jobs are important drivers of our nation's and, in fact, the world's economy. And discoveries that originated in academic and industry laboratories around the country have led to tremendous advances in healthcare, transportation, communications, clean energy, agriculture, and more over the last century. The next generation of STEM workforce is really critical to maintaining the nation's leading role in an increasingly competitive world economy, and in continuing to make us healthier, safer, better connected, better stewards of our environment, and more efficient users of energy. So the importance of high quality and broadly accessible STEM education for all students at all levels is incredibly important. My boss has said time and time again that upping our game in STEM education is one of the most important things that we can do to ensure that our nation remains successful in the future. And it's in classrooms and laboratories, maker spaces, backyard laboratories, informal conversations with mentors that we're inspiring young people to start thinking about how they can tackle the biggest scientific and engineering challenges, both of today and tomorrow. But discussions about STEM education often default to talking about science and math education. And it's really imperative that we not overlook the important role that engineering education plays and the critical component that engineering plays in the STEM ecosystem. Engineering education is really vital to producing the workforce that we need for 21st century jobs. So today, what we want to focus on is both what engineering education looks like today, in and outside the classroom and at the K-12 and undergraduate levels, and what it might look like in the future. What do we want to upgrade or tweak? What new skills might future engineers need? And how can you in the audience play a role? Whether you are a practitioner or an educator or both, communicator, a policymaker, a parent, or a student, there are ways that you can support and strengthen the training that our future engineers are getting. And so we want to talk about that as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce, with brief sketches, each of our panelists and then give them an opportunity one by one to make a few opening remarks before we launch into this discussion. So I'll read all of their bios here at the start, and then we'll go down the row and give you guys an opportunity to make your opening remarks. So I will start here with Thea Saar, is the Director of Programs at Discovery, where she oversees 8 engineering outreach initiatives, such as Engineers Week, Introduce a Girl to Engineering Day, the Future City Competition, and Global Day of the Engineer. Thea works with Discovery's coalition of more than 100 partners to develop customizable resources volunteers and educators can use to celebrate engineering and engage students in engineering exploration. Prior to Discovery, Thea spent 14 years at WGBH, where she developed outreach campaigns for NOVA, Zoom, and Fetch. While at WGBH, she also co-developed Design Squad, a PBS series designed to engage students in engineering, and launched Engineer Your Life, a national initiative to change the way we talk about engineering with the goal of getting girls interested in engineering. A particular focus of her work is dispelling stereotypes about engineering and science, and encouraging girls and minorities to pursue STEM education and careers. Thea received her Master's of Education from Boston University and her Bachelor of Arts from Clark University. She's also the recipient of numerous awards, including a Peabody Award for Design Squad, 2 Distinguished Achievement Awards from the Association of Educational Publishers, the Lawrence W. Pracken Professional Cooperation Award from ITEEA, and the Women in Engineering Proactive Networks Educator Award for Engineer Your Life. Kirsten Fogg is an aerospace engineer and the STEM engagement lead at the NASA Armstrong Flight Research Center, or AFRC. In her current role in the Office of Education, she manages numerous education programs, including AFRC Robotics House Teams for the NASA Robotics Alliance, the Library Initiative for Teachers and Students, the NASA Community College Aerospace Scholars, and other informal education activities. She also serves as the Operations Engineering Lead for the Preliminary Research Aerodynamic Design to Land on Mars, or PRNTL-M project. Kirsten joined NASA AFRC as an intern in the summer of 2012 and 2013, and graduated from Sacramento State University in 2013 with a BA in Mathematics and Liberal Studies. She began at NASA as an operations engineer in August 2013 with Jacobs Engineering, and joined as a NASA employee in March of last year in the Office of Education. Kirsten is currently pursuing a Master of Science in Aerospace Engineering at UCLA. Dr. Edward Coyle is the John B. Peatman Distinguished Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering at Georgia Tech, and a Georgia Research Alliance Eminent Scholar. He is the founder and director of the Vertically Integrated Projects Program, which integrates research and education by embedding large-scale, long-term teams of undergraduates in the research efforts of faculty and their graduate students. Dr. Coyle was a co-recipient of the U.S. National Academy of Engineering's 2005 Bernard M. Gordon Prize for Innovation in Engineering and Technology Education. In 1998, Dr. Coyle was elected a Fellow of the IEEE for his contributions to the theory of nonlinear signal processing. His current research interests include undergraduate education, signal and image processing, and wireless sensor networks. And finally, we have Kurt Long, an aerospace engineer who works for the Experimental Aerophysics Branch at NASA Ames Research Center's Fluid Mechanics Lab. Kurt graduated with a degree in aerospace engineering from Penn State in 1985, and conducted graduate studies in rotorcraft blade element rotor modeling there and at Boeing Vertol until 1987, when he started working for the US Navy as a shipboard helicopter flight test engineer. For the next decade, Kurt conducted shipboard helicopter flight tests, piloted shipboard flight simulator tests, and led rotorcraft analytic efforts to improve the safety and compatibility of shipboard rotorcraft operations and to develop advanced test techniques. Kurt now conducts wind tunnel experiments in subsonic bluff body aerodynamics and propulsion simulators for a variety of NASA and non-NASA sponsors. He is also the lab manager at Ames Research Center's Fluid Mechanics Lab, which has 6 different wind tunnel facilities. Since 2001, Kurt has served as branch intern coordinator and mentor for over 120 engineering students at NASA. Kurt helped develop the NASA Ames Intern Safety Training Guide and also does wind tunnel design and aerodynamic consulting work for various educational outreach organizations, including Teachers in Space, Science Olympiad, and the Mythbusters TV show. So I think, Thea, we'll start with you, and I'll turn the floor over to you for some opening remarks.
Great, thank you. Thanks, everyone. It's exciting to be here in beautiful, rainy San Diego. As Meredith said, I am Thea Saar. I'm the Director of Programs for Discover E, and was excited to be asked to be part of this panel, especially when it said the name was Putting the E in STEM, because that's what Discover E, that's our whole raison d'etre. We put the E, the engineering, in STEM. And we do this by leading a volunteer movement that seeks to celebrate engineers and engineering, what we've achieved thus far, and also inspire the next generation of engineers. And we do this through a coalition. We don't do anything alone. We do it through a coalition of 100 different organizations, and we're very excited that this year our co-chairs of Discover E are Boeing, AIAA, and SAE. And many of the other organizations that I've seen on the list today are members. Look behind us, and most of those folks are members of our coalition. But our big belief is that working alone isn't going to do us much good. We all have to work together. We all have to be pulling in the same direction, using the same messages, using the same resources and programs so that we can make enough noise out there for people to recognize that engineering is powerful and exciting. And we also say that we turn the whole science and math, or the gateway to engineering, into really engineering is a wonderful gateway into science and math. That project-based learning, that opportunity to get your hands dirty and try something is what's going to really encourage students to say, oh, I need to study wind because it's going to affect my, what I'm trying to do here. It's going to affect my paper airplane. Or I need to learn about angles so my catapult will work better. So how do we go about, what does Discover E do? Well, we do a number of things. We provide programs, turnkey programs that any organization, from academia to engineering societies to corporations to not-for-profits to educators can use. We provide training to our volunteers, and we have a number of resources, turnkey resources we offer. So our program that you're probably most familiar with is Engineers Week, which is coming up in February 22nd to the 28th, I believe. Though I've been doing Engineers Week so long now that the dates kind of slip around a little bit, so don't quote me on that. But Engineers Week has been going on since the early 50s, and it's really been an opportunity for engineers to say, hey, we're doing a good job. And because a lot of times people don't recognize the work that engineers are doing. And in the early 90s, we changed the focus a little bit with Engineers Week, and it was the first national call to send volunteers into the classroom to show kids what engineering is all about. Talk to them, because as we know, most Americans don't know an engineer. It's hard to imagine here on the coast and in Boston, where I'm from, because you can't swing a dead cat without hitting an engineer in those two communities, but for the rest of the country, there's the dearth of engineers. So getting people outside of your own offices and going into the classrooms and going into the after-school programs where the kids are so you can meet them, they can meet you. In the early 90s also, we started to recognize that there was a problem with diversity in the field. That the lack of women in engineering was a problem. And we started a project called Introduce a Girl to Engineering Day. That's on the Thursday of Engineers Week every year. And that's really about role models and showing young girls what engineering is all about. And it's been a tremendous success. We have a wonderful story of a young girl attending a Society of Women Engineering's event. And Christy, she met Bonnie Dunbar, former astronaut, and heard all about ceramics engineer, got a signed autographed picture of her, went home, put it on her bedroom wall, and today she is a ceramics engineer at Lockheed Martin. So you never know when those touch points, when you're going to go out and meet someone and hit them at the right time and change their trajectory. Our Future City program is 40,000 students around the country who try and design a city that can exist 100 years in the future. And we're very proud of this program because 50% of our participants in this program for middle school students are girls. And we do no special marketing, we do no special outreach. It's that authentic problem of asking them to think about what the future looks like and what their future looks like. They get very invested in that. Our Global Marathon program is a program for professional women to network. It happens in March. It's the only engineering and technology program affiliated with International Women's Day. And new this year, working with our partners AIAA, SAE, and Boeing, we're launching a new project called Global Day of the Engineer. Engineers Week has been copied around the world, but sometimes it's in Africa, it's in October. In Ireland, it's in June. Australia, it's in other times. But we thought, let's have one day around the world where folks can celebrate and encourage people to consider engineering. So that's our new program this year. That'll be on February 25th, Wednesday of Engineers Week. And we're asking people to pledge one of three things: to share an engineering feat on social media, to to inspire young kids and to take 5 minutes and say to your colleague, you're doing a great job, or aren't we doing cool stuff? And just take a moment to say, hey, this is really interesting. So I'm not going to take too much more time because I know you have lots to say, and you have lots to say, and you have lots to say. And you guys will have lots of questions, hopefully. But we also offer online trainings, hands-on activities. We also have a photo library where you can download images. Lots of time, that's a big barrier. What does engineering look like? Who's doing engineering? What does hands-on activities look like? We have that. So I encourage you all to come to discover E, with the letter E, not the Y, .org, and check out all of our programs and training and resources.
Thanks, Thea. Kirsten.
So my name is Kirsten Fogg. I'm an engineer at the NASA Armstrong Flight Research Center, and I currently work in the Office of Education. And with being in the Office of Education, we are very into engineering education, as that's what most of our center consists of, our engineers. And we do everything from kindergarten through college, even graduate school, and PhD candidates come and have internships with us as well. And so with that, we start in the K through 12 level where we have programs such as a program called NASA BEST, which is Beginning Engineering, Science, and Technology. And it has lesson plans where you can go into a classroom, get materials that you probably already have there, and be able to have a hands-on experience with the students where they get the engineering design process all the way from trying to have a concept of what you can build all the way through sometimes getting things to fly or have some other end activity where they can see everything that they've accomplished through the lesson. And it's a great program where the students just get that hands-on experience at a very young age and get interested in engineering very young. And we also have programs such as robotics, where every summer I have an intern that holds workshops for 4th through 8th graders where they have to design, build, program, and test a little Lego robot. And kids always come out of that saying, I want to be an engineer, I want to be an engineer. I didn't know people could do stuff like this, where they just don't get that hands-on experience in the classroom every day. And so we try to develop more programs that help get those into the classroom, whether that's at a young age or in college. So with college-based, we have a program called NASA Flight Scholars, where we have, this last summer, we had 14 interns come and work on this small glider project. They had to help design it. They actually built the plane themselves. It's about this big, and it has potential for Mars travel. So it was all intern-based. So the interns built the plane, had to test the plane, had to figure out why it wasn't flying the way that they wanted it to, had to get a new design to help it to fly, fix the aerodynamic problems that it had, program an autopilot to get it to fly, take it out to the lake bed, test it some more, and we got, within 10 weeks, it went from not even having a plane built to interns creating a plane that can be controlled remotely. And that's one of the many programs that we do at my center, where we also had professors there with us from multiple colleges, where they are working with the students on a project that we gave them, and next year it will be transitioning to these professors that work with us, creating a program at their colleges to incorporate into the daily classroom where they can come up with projects, go through it, and we can now mentor them and help them finish projects like that. So we have a lot of different projects, and we can talk about some of them more as we go through some questions, but I think this is a really good panel to be on today.
Thanks, Kirsten. Ed?
Thanks, Meredith. Could you please, oh, the slides are already up. Thanks. Unlike my other colleagues who were wise and did not bring PowerPoint slides, I did, so bear with me. But one of the advantages of it is that it allows me to show you the logo for our program. And nowadays, everything has to be branded, and so that's our fancy logo up there. So VIP stands for Vertically Integrated Projects, and our goal in starting this is actually to achieve systemic reform of STEM education. And actually, it's broader than STEM education, as we'll talk about later, but for now, we'll focus on STEM. So the ladder in the V, you'll notice the right leg of the V is actually a ladder, and that's because we create large teams, large multidisciplinary teams, that have sophomores, juniors, seniors, masters, PhD students, postdocs, faculty on each team. So it's meant to overcome the segmentation of university by year and by function. So the primary goal is to actually involve everybody on campus in innovation. And so scalability was a primary criterion when we were designing this program. And first you have to think about what innovation is and why I use innovation instead of research. Innovation by NSF's definition is the development of novel products, services, and processes for the benefit of society. And that certainly describes what engineers do and what scientists and technologists do. But it doesn't necessarily apply to all disciplines. So I prefer inspiration plus execution. Essentially a good idea that you follow through on and see to fruition. So let's keep that last definition of innovation in mind as we go through this. So as we were trying to figure out how to build a program that would scale to involve everybody on campus, we ran into three barriers that you don't normally recognize. When you're embedded in a system, you're used to the way it operates, and then when you try to do something, you bump up against things that were sort of implicit knowledge for how a university should be structured. You realize that they cause all sorts of problems. And the first one is, and I call them the three forms of fragmentation. And first is by mission. Almost all universities talk about their research mission, education mission, and service mission, or discovery, learning, engagement, if you want to talk about outcomes. And research is typically what faculty and graduate students do. Education is what we do to undergraduates. And service, well, that's for faculty, that's kind of degenerated into serving on committees, as opposed to linking up with partners off campus. So that's a really bad one. And you're forced to sort of wear one hat or the other in a university. You can't do all of them. The other fragmentation is by time. Everything's chunked in semesters and academic years and time to graduate. And so it's hard to put together a program that lasts many semesters, many years, many decades. And finally, the one I'm sure everybody in the room is familiar with is how everything's segmented by discipline. You all have degrees in some specific discipline. And the budget silos at universities are created to focus you on that. And breaking out of those silos is a tough thing to do. So our goal was to try to overcome these three forms of fragmentation. And we didn't get it right the first time. We're actually on what I call VIP 3.0. But I think we've got it this time. So the goal is to foster innovation by involving students in challenging projects embedded in faculty research. So the goal is to really leverage faculty research interests to improve undergraduate education. And you ensure success by providing enough time for the undergraduates to really come up to speed to do something real, to learn about the project, contribute to it, and eventually lead some part of it. The context is a compelling one for the advisor, because if your student team is doing well, they're contributing to your research, so you benefit, so you want them to do well. And finally, when you get those first two correct, you get a great mentoring structure, sophomores all the way up through faculty. What I like about it is I know the undergraduates on my team as well as I know my own grad students. So VIP is really a way to bring people together that hasn't existed before. Mainly by reorganizing how we teach the undergrads. And so they get real projects they can participate in, and faculty get help with their research. And no fancy pictures on this slide, because this is the guts of the program. Every VIP team is faculty-led. They're large teams, typically 10 to 20 undergrads per team. Our largest team has 45, 1 to 4 graduate students, and 1 to 3 faculty advisors. Sophomores through seniors on each team. Each student can register for academic credit for up to 3 years on the same team. And then when students graduate, they're replaced on the team with new students, and the returning students train the new students each semester. Now, those of you in industry will say, well, this is obvious, right? Because this is basically how industry works. But implementing it in an academic environment was actually quite a challenge. But because of this structure, the teams can continue for years, even decades. My own team is 15 years old now. And several hundred students have been through it. The teams are large. I always show a picture of a team because you don't really understand it until you see a photo of it. And this actually addresses several issues. My graduate students are on the right. There are 3 of them there. The rest are undergrads. My team is the E Stadium team. We use our football stadium as a test bed for technology. And so we get into the game. We get into every home game for free.
Ooh, nice.
All the students do. So they like that. They're working, but they get to attend the football game. And so sports, it turns out, everybody of every ethnic background is interested in sports. So in terms of diversity, this is almost always one of our most diverse teams. Perhaps not by the number of women who participate. We don't do any better with women than the regular population in ECE and CS and civil engineering, but there are other teams within VIP who do, and we'll talk about that later. So talk a little bit about my team so you can get an idea of the scale of what you can do with a team like this. The E Stadium team, we use the entire football stadium at Georgia Tech as a test bed. We like it from communications and signal processing point of view because you've got 50,000 people with smartphones and all sorts of other communication devices in about a square kilometer. So very challenging RF and communication and multimedia environment. And one of the things, there are 3 parts of the team. One team actually designs a sensor network to do structural vibration monitoring, which actually tells us what's happening in the game. And we also listen to the crowd to determine which plays are the most popular. We also actively monitor the RF spectrum to ensure everybody's getting service. And so the system you see up there was designed by members of the team. And it's deployed in the stadium and working as we speak. And I'll show you the fun part. So these are the vibration measurements from one game. This was when Georgia Tech lost to Miami, unfortunately. We haven't quite figured out yet how to use technology to ensure that Georgia Tech always wins, but that comes later. That's our grand challenge. You can see just by how the stadium shakes, acceleration in G's is on the left, time of the game is on the bottom axis, basically the first 3 quarters. And you can see in touchdowns, everybody jumps up. That's a nice impulse to the structure. And the thing that actually vibrates the stands the most is actually a Budweiser advertisement that gets people jumping up and down. And that's the one that we actually think causes structural problems in the stands because it causes them to twist. Now, this is the key to both scalability, functionality, and everything. We had hoped that our teams would be multidisciplinary when we launched them. This is actually the data from last semester. So each vertical bar there is one VIP team. The height of the bar is the number of students on the team. Our biggest is 45, 23. Newer teams tend to be smaller because you don't want chaos when you're starting it up. So new teams start around 6 to 8, and the average size is around 12 to 15. And the colors are the disciplines on each team. And so right now, if you look at the list on the right, that's 24 disciplines that have students who are enrolled and earning academic credit that counts towards their degree in the VIP program. And so these are just a lot of fun. The teams are great. I really enjoy my team. They're so embedded in my research, I couldn't imagine doing my work without them. And so when I go visit universities, and there are now 22 universities that have VIP programs up and running. And I always ask faculty, what they could do if they had a VIP team. So you go after that self-interest. How could you improve your research if you had a team like this? And then good things tend to happen. And if you're interested in more information about the program, you can either send me email later or visit the website there. Thanks.
Thanks, Ed. And Kurt.
My name's Kurt Long. I work at NASA Ames Research Center. I have the privilege of working at a pretty nice wind tunnel facility, very, very experimental. We're part of what's called the experimental aerophysics branch. And I have the luck of being employed by this facility where we have 6 different wind tunnels, and we're able to get in a lot of interns to help us do these different projects. At NASA Ames in general, we have between 400 and 500 interns there every summer. vast majority of them engineering. In my building, we have about 20 to 25 people in my branch, but yet in the summertime, we get an additional 10 or 12 engineering interns. To me, I really, really like the ability to do that because most of our interns are undergrad, usually sophomore, junior level kind of a thing. But we do get some freshmen, we do get some high school seniors as well, and every now and then we get grad students. But what I'm really thrilled and excited about is we get to get these young folks in that are just at the beginning of their college engineering careers and give them some real world hands-on experience. We've talked already a little bit, and we'll talk a lot more today about the utility of getting that hands-on part of your education to supplement everything you learn out of a book. Where we work is just fantastic because we have 6 different wind tunnels. We try very hard to get these students to be in a position where they're not just coming and learning about NASA, going to briefings all day long about the cool things that NASA has done for the last 50 or 60 years. We try to treat them just like you would treat a new employee. We give them safety training. We train them how to run wind tunnels. We make them fully capable of doing everything. And then we assign projects to them. And I don't honestly know how other facilities, other places that use engineers do this, but what we try to do is we train the student, get them up to the point where they can understand a problem. We then give them, usually on the order of 3 problems for a summer session, 3 projects, knowing full well that they will never get all 3 of them done. That's okay, let's face it, in the real world, you always have multiple projects ongoing. You can never get them all done on any given schedule. You have to have them done when they need to be done by. We give our students these different projects and then ask them to execute them for the summer, just like they're another staff member. We really don't treat them much differently other than they tend to be a lot younger than the rest of us. But I guess for me, what I found, it's really quite thrilling to see them go through all the stages of being an engineer. We ask the students to design or to understand a problem, then to design an experiment that could investigate that problem, make the parts or have the parts made, conduct, in my case, a wind tunnel test or some other experiment, collect the data, analyze the data, and then stand up in front of us and report the data to everybody in the building, all the imposing old folks with all the degrees and everything, and that's a really terrifying thing for many of our students. But to me, it is just so incredible to see the professional growth that occurs from when you get the student in and 12 weeks later, after they've had a chance to go do all these things, it's quite phenomenal. We lead them from the standpoint of, here's a problem. Let's say, for instance, I need you to develop a new mount for a wind tunnel model of a new rocket that we're testing or something. Most students coming into our lab have what I see a lot in engineering students, a slightly warped view of what engineering actually is. Me included, I went to be an engineer because I thought I was going to sit in front of a computer all day long, draw really cool pictures of airplanes, and then give them to somebody else and say, now make that for me. And that's not quite what engineering is, as we all know. There's a lot more analysis that goes into it. Well, it's funny, I think in large part because a lot of students don't get to talk to a real engineer before they actually go away to school. They join the engineering career path not knowing exactly what we do as engineers. That's, to me, the little quiet secret about engineering. We don't do a very good job at describing the actual specifics of what does an engineer actually do. And in our lab, I get to see the results of that. You have students that come in and tell me, well, Kurt, I thought I could just draw a design for the mount, you would go make it, and we'd put it in the wind tunnel, and either it works or it doesn't. And then we point out to them, yes, and it's a multi-million-dollar wind tunnel, and if that mount doesn't work, you have a multi-million-dollar model going into a multi-million-dollar wind tunnel. We're down for 6 months. Explain that one to everybody. That's a hard thing to do. And it kind of drives home to them, to me, the fundamental challenge and really cool thing about being an engineer. I need to make something, but it has to work, and it has to work based on a variety of disciplines, a variety of factors. It's easy for somebody to say, build me an airplane that goes fast. I can make airplanes that go fast, but it gets substantially more difficult if you need that airplane going fast to also have a low acoustic signature and to also weigh 13% less than the one that we built last month, kind of a thing. That's the crux of engineering to me, is this multidisciplinary sort of design with lots and lots of constraints. And I'll be honest, when you're a student by the college level, You're mastering individual topics, but at least my perspective, I've noticed that these students, although they've mastered the individuals, they're still getting up to speed on how do I pull all of those together to come up with a final design that sort of optimizes everything. We've had several instances where we've had students we'll give them a project, they will come up with a design based on whatever lessons they feel is required. They get very, very close to making the design, and we have a rule, we want students to fail when they're doing what we do. The way you learn, the way you become a good engineer is to fail. I have failed in so many things, it's just not funny. But hopefully you fail and then learn from your failures and then don't do it again. That would be the bad thing. That first failure will give you in any one thing, but second one, that's a baddie. We want the students to get that experience of failing, learning from their mistakes, and then going on and recouping from it. And I have any number of memories of students who will go, think they have the right answer. We'll let them go down that path and then find, oh yeah, okay, that part, it is strong enough, but it won't fit in the wind tunnel. It's an awesome part, and I could never use it in a million years. I should have thought a little bit further about that. To me, that's what I love about being a mentor. That's what I love about bringing in engineering interns. You give them that hands-on experience. As we're going to talk about here shortly, I guess my big regret is, oh man, it shouldn't be at the college sophomore, junior, senior level that these students are getting those engineering experiences, failure and multidisciplinary design constraints. It would be so much better if we could drive those kind of learning experiences much, much, much earlier, because I think that'll help people choose whether the engineering career is for them. Yesterday, I spoke with one of my interns, and I just said, why did you become an engineer? And he said, because Kurt, I really like cars, and I was pretty sure I was going to be able to draw a cool picture of a cool race car and give it to somebody, and they would go build it for me. And I said, that's why I became an aero engineer, but for airplanes. Well, although it's funny, it worries me a little bit that, is that why we're luring people in? Because they think we're basically fashion designers. We're going to make a cool looking dress and then somebody's going to go make it and we'll be a millionaire. That's not what engineering is. That's a different path kind of a thing. So at least where I stand, that to me is, it's really, really fun seeing all that. And it's where in my brain we need to be going. And I look at everyone else on the panel here, and these folks have done some incredible things down at the lower levels. And I think that's where we really need to be focusing our effort. Every one of us, we made our decisions as to what to do before we got to college. That's where we should be focusing on these folks. So that's I guess, what I have.
Thanks. So I think you set us up well for several of the questions that I wanted to pose, but before we dive into those, I wanted to just make a general announcement to the audience that we have a microphone in the center of the room, so if you have a question for the panel, please feel free to hop up to the microphone and I will call on you as soon as we can. And if you have questions that you're submitting online, I'm keeping an eye on those as well, and we'll integrate some of those into this conversation too. So Kurt, I think you set us up pretty well to lead into one of the first questions that I wanted to pose to this group. I wanted to ask each of you to talk about what you see as the biggest challenges for getting students interested in studies or a career in engineering. And Kurt, you alluded to students potentially not actually knowing what engineers do. So certainly that's got to be one barrier. But all of you cover a really wide range of different settings, from formal and informal to education at the K-12 all the way through undergraduate level. And so I wondered how some of those challenges differ and whether there are some solutions that your organizations have attempted to get more students interested in careers and studies in engineering, and what kind of successful solutions you've worked on so far.
I can start. So for one of the biggest challenges, I would have to agree that a lot of students don't really completely understand what engineering is because they've never had any real applications for engineering. It's all textbook, it's all theoretical, it's never the application. And so, or they think maybe it's too hard. They don't know enough about it, so they're just like, oh, I know engineering, people say it's hard, so it must be hard. So that's one of the things we do with the BEST program I already mentioned at the K through 12 levels. We're working with 5 other NASA centers to get not only student experiences with the hands-on learning, but a lot of educator professional development where we're doing workshops with current teachers that they can go and bring that experience back into their classrooms. And then we have at the community college level, there's a program run through NASA Johnson called the NASA Community College Aerospace Scholars. And so I'm currently responsible for that at our center, where we have twice a year, we have a workshop that students have to go and do an online program before they can even be considered to be a participant in it. And it's basically like an online class where they have to learn about programming, and they have to take tests, and they have to read research articles. And then if they make it through the top, I think it's 70, you have to be above 70%, then you have the opportunity to get placed at a NASA center, where they come for a 3-day workshop, and they have a team of about 10 students where they go and they have to, we give them a challenge, and the challenge is that, the first challenge is that they have to pick up little rocks with a Mars rover. So they have to somehow build this rover, program it to be able to go and pick up rocks. Once they click their program button, they are not allowed to touch it. And we have the whole Mars yard set up, and they have to go from start to finish, where they have to work together as a team, figure out who's going to do what jobs, have a whole project team, and they have to turn in their budget for all the parts that they're using. They have requirements that they have to follow, and they go through that entire process. And it's for community college students, so that it helps them get that hands-on experience, because a lot of community college students don't get as much, I'd say, higher level research experience. And so it helps that transition, figure out early in their college careers if they want to do engineering, if this is along the lines of what they want to do. And we actually have the different jobs that they can pick in their groups as real positions that we have at NASA on project teams. So they have somebody who does the programming, they have somebody who has to actually build it, they have somebody who has to design it. They have all these different positions where they get to learn about what different types of engineering positions there could be, and get that hands-on, this is real life, what we could, kind of things we could do. And of course it's on a small scale because it's a 3-day workshop, but it's a really cool experience to be able to do that. And then it's the same with the Prandtl project, the small glider I was talking about, that we have 2 groups that came. We had community college students, and we had 4-year college students that worked together to put that whole project together. And it's a real project that they do. Like, this glider actually has potential for Mars travel, but there's not as much of a time constraint, because it is a student-run project that if they don't meet a deadline, the center isn't going to get mad at us. But they get to know that, hey, we made this thing fly, and guess what? In 10 years down the road, I might see that on Mars. And so it's really cool that they get that hands-on experience, get to learn what engineering is, and hopefully be able to understand it more than just reading a textbook. And one of the main things that the interns said this summer is that they had no idea how in-depth engineering could be and the things that they could do with it.
I was going to say that the K-12 level, there's some really large challenges of getting engineering into the classroom. It's time, teachers' time. It's high stakes testing is killing hands-on learning in K-12. It's teacher prep, it's good curriculum, and it's teachers, just like students, just like parents, they don't know what engineering is, and it's really scary, really scary. So it's going to take a lot of the industry, it's going to take academia, it's going to take not-for-profits going in there and showing these educators, because they really are the gatekeepers to the students. The parents will help kids figure out that they might want to go into engineering, but the teachers are going to be the folks that the parents and the kids are looking to for what are the resources, what are the summer camps, what are the after-school programs, how can I get interested in engineering? And there's been more of a movement to get more project-based learning into schools, and to really bring it down to even all the way down to preschool, and call it engineering, and use that engineering design process, and use project management, so that kids can start to, early on, fail fast to succeed sooner. That was our slogan on Design Squad with the students. But so it'll be really interesting now with next generation science standards. And if you're not familiar with those, that's national standards that is kind of the first attempt to actually bring, even though it says science standards, the engineering design process and engineering is on par with science in those standards. And I'm kind of curious to see what happens with Every Child Succeeds Act, and to see if that alleviates some of the pressure on high stakes testing and giving more autonomy back to the states. It'll be cool to see what happens there. But one of the solutions that we're doing at Discover E not only is sending engineers into classrooms and sending them into after schools, but trying to do a lot more with project-based learning. And our Future City project is our biggest direct service to students. And it's middle school students, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. It's been going on for 20 years. And we ask students to design a city that that exists 100 years in the future. And they come up with some of the most amazing ideas. Every year we have a new challenge that they have to address. Last year it was urban agriculture. They had to design a city that they could grow enough crops right in their city to feed their population. They design their city first in SimCity. They research that year's theme. They write a paper on it. They do a model, and then they present it to a panel of judges like you all, engineers, technologists, architects, STEM professionals. It's one of the first opportunities for students not to present to their parents, their grandparents, or their teachers. And so it's very empowering to them to actually have real questions from professionals who are really interested in their work and have that opportunity. They shake hands, they're in suits, the judges are in suits. So we like to think of this as one of the first professional opportunities for these kids. But I think that project-based learning, you'll hear me talk about that for the rest of today. That's really where it's at in terms of if we're gonna get kids and students interested in engineering and keep them on that path, we have to keep them engaged. We have to keep showing them why it's important, how their interests of helping and making a difference in society align with having the technology, the skill set, the 21st century skills to solve those problems and be part of that conversation. Because kids do want to be part of that conversation.
I want to come back to talk about K-12 and teachers a little bit more, but I wanted to turn to Ed and Kurt first and see if you had additional thoughts to add on this question about what are the challenges specific to engineering education.
Sure. Actually, in thinking about the K through 12, I think you've got the same problem that that's actually worse than what you see in undergraduates. Every science program in K through 12, it's physics, biology, chemistry. There's no engineering. So students come through K through 12 and they're exposed to science, and they don't really know how engineering necessarily fits with science. And then the media doesn't help. No. How many of you saw The Martian? Well, I managed to watch it on the plane out here. It's the only time I get to see movies anymore is when I'm flying on a plane. And there was one quote in that movie that I actually rewound it and watched it again and wrote it down. And so Matt Damon, of course he gets stranded on Mars, and he's trying to figure out how to survive. And he says, in the face of overwhelming odds, and excuse the language coming up, I'm left with only one option. I'm going to have to science the shit out of this. Now, almost everything that he was doing was engineering. Now, certainly he's applying scientific principles, but he's solving problems, and it was all engineering. And that got me thinking. And if you actually look through the media, news stories for different things, from the Challenger disaster to all sorts of other things, and landing on the moon, triumphs come from science, failures come from engineering. And that's an attribution that we really need to change. And it's also rocket science. It's not rocket engineering.
Right. And did you know in the book he was an engineer?
He was an engineer in the book?
He was a mechanical engineer in the book, and the filmmakers changed it to scientist.
Yeah. And
why?
So, but there's a bias in K through 12 K through 12 education to science, and also I've actually been lectured by a dean at a very well-respected university of science when I tried to talk with him about the VIP program and how it works in science. He goes, well, you understand the difference between science and engineering, don't you? And I said, yes, and I explained it to him. Then he said, well, let me tell you what the difference is. And he went on to say that, science exists at, even small liberal arts colleges, engineering isn't there, and so, science is just much more fundamental than engineering. And so I think there's a bias towards science that needs to be overcome. So it's more than just getting the word out. It's also overcoming a bias that exists out there.
Yeah, to me, engineering is one of those careers that most every other career, if you say, I want to be a fireman, that's pretty evident to everybody when you're 6 years older or more what you want to do kind of a thing. But if you say, I want to be an engineer, it's not nearly as obvious what it is that you want to do. And that's a problem that we have. It's very difficult to lure somebody to a field when they don't exactly know what it is. That's something where it's too late to get that word out when they're already in the field of engineering or have already chosen not to get in the field of engineering. So these opportunities down at the 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th grade levels, that's when all of us made our minds up where we wanted to go with our lives. To me, that's fundamental. And I definitely am a supporter of, to be a good engineer, you need to have very good fundamentals, fundamentally grounded in science and math and all of these things. You need to do that. That's the building blocks for it. But then it's how you assemble them together, to me, is kind of what discriminates an engineer from maybe just a pure research kind of a thing. And I guess the one thing as we were talking here, I was thinking when I was in 5th grade or 6th grade, we had to do something in my science class that as I think about it now, it teetered on the edge of being engineering, and they could have done one or two things different that would have made me think about it just a little bit differently. And I'm thinking, it wouldn't have been that tough for the teacher or professor to do it. It was 5th or 6th grade. We had to each make a little popsicle stick bridge. They said, here's 2 pieces. You got to make a popsicle stick bridge that spans it, and I'm going to put a 10-pound weight on it, and the popsicle stick bridge has to support the weight. We all did it, and most of them supported the weight. Some were miserable failures. Okay, well, that's a bummer. But you could go that one extra step and say, now you get extra credit for whoever can do it with the fewest number of popsicle sticks. And that starts getting back to me to what that whole engineering thing is. Yeah, I can make it do it, but it's these other constraints that really, really discriminate if you really dig down in. And to me, that's where maybe that wouldn't be that tough for a teacher or a principal or somebody to, maybe you don't even have to bring up the word engineering to a 5th grader, but maybe just the idea of design this, but design it with some constraints, because that's the mindset of an engineer down the road. Maybe you don't confuse them with multidisciplinary optimization at that level. That's cool, you don't need to, but the idea is simple enough. To me, that might be something that we could do down the road. I don't know.
So I wanted to follow up on something that you mentioned about teachers in the K-12 space, and ask whether that's a problem that we can start getting at with in-service teachers, so professional development, or is that something that we can look at how teachers are being trained while they are still college students? So the pre-service teachers, is there something we can do to provide them with better resources to be able to teach engineering in their classrooms when they become teachers? And similarly related to the conversation around K-12, one of our questions from the web asked, do you see 3D printing as a game changer in providing an entry point for K-12 students in engineering? And I would actually expand that and say, are there things like the movement toward making or other opportunities like that could be better able to engage K-12 students in engineering opportunities, this sort of design, testing, redesign, algorithm that a number of you have described. And one of the things that I wonder about a lot in a lot of the programs that have been described and the programs that are out there is that a lot of them are opt-in. So if it's not in the classroom, then it's the students who are already interested in it that are pursuing these options. So again, in this K-12 space, are there ways that we can bring it into the classroom so more students are exposed to it, almost whether they want to be or not? And is something like making or 3D printing or some of these other high-tech options that are coming online and becoming more prevalent one way to do that? So there's a dozen questions for you guys on that, in that vicinity.
Well, I think that there's lots of folks trying to work with teachers to get engineering into the classroom. The Museum of Science in Boston has designed a curriculum. They have an engineering curriculum for middle school and for high school. And they do lots of in-service teacher trainings. And that's not just Boston, that happens nationally. And lots of folks are looking at it, but it's not, engineering is always the poor stepchild. It's even next generation science standards. It's not next generation science and engineering standards. And like I said in my previous remarks, teachers were the students. they were us. They had the same education that we did, and they may not have been interested in math and science, so they don't even know that they can take that popsicle stick bridge to the next level. And they're scared of it. They have been indoctrinated to be the person at the front of the classroom who knows all the answers. And we all know that the best part about engineering is you don't know all the answers. You are figuring out those answers as you go. And so I think as more teachers become more comfortable with project-based learning, they become more comfortable. What I hear from teachers all the time is once they do one project-based learning activity with their students, they attribute that to becoming better teachers because they're then more willing to let the students be, student-centered learning and let them be at the center of their own education and let them be at the center of what they're doing. So I think it has to be, and education, as we all know, changes slowly. You probably don't know that, Ed, trying to change academia. But it's a slow, long process with many different entry points. So I think, and I went to the plenary session, it was all about collaboration. So it's, if you talk to one teacher and you talk to one teacher and you talk to one teacher, it seems slow, but it does move the needle because the folks that teachers trust most are teachers. So if they hear from another teacher that this is a good program, that this is going to help you do, check all those boxes, they're more likely to get involved.
I know there was a question out in the audience.
I have a question for Ed. So in your team picture that you were showing of the VIP team,
Yes.
You had some diversity in your team, but a dramatic lack of women in your team. So does Thea have to be successful in the programs she's doing before you can have more female gender diversity on your team? Or are there ways to actually bring women into the engineering disciplines at the undergraduate level?
Sure, and actually that was a big concern of ours as we were putting together the VIP program, is what the impact would or could be on diversity. And for that particular team, as you mentioned, there was good ethnic diversity. We weren't doing any worse in terms of the fraction of women on the team. And there were 2 women who were on the team who actually weren't in that photo. But that kept us at the usual 13 to 15% women in electrical and computer engineering and computer science. And despite years and years of efforts, those numbers just haven't moved up. But one of the things we found is that when you create teams on different topics, if you create them on topics of interest to women or people, whatever your background is, you create something that's of interest to people, then they'll want to be engineers and they'll want to join the team. And so my department actually goes out and uses VIP teams to recruit. And sometimes they'll take team members with them, or they'll just go out and describe the different teams and say, oh, here's a really cool VIP project. This one's in engineering, and they're doing this and this and this. There's an e-democracy team, for example. There's some teams in biomed. And different groups of students respond differently to each type of team. So I don't know if that's we're doing what we can to try to recruit more people of different backgrounds in to engineering, science, and every other field at Georgia Tech, and this is one component of it. But I think it's a long-term effort. But your feeder population comes from K through 12, and if there are students who've already decided by the time they're in 8th or 9th grade that they're not going into engineering, they're very hard to reach. So yes, we would definitely like to see that improve.
Thea, you've done a lot of work trying to get girls interested in engineering, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about ways that we talk about engineering as a discipline and about engineers themselves that can make it more appealing to women, make it a more welcoming seeming environment.
Well, it's an onion, really, trying to unpack all the reasons why women don't go into engineering or so underrepresented. But One thing research that we did a few years ago found was we asked young girls what they thought about engineering. And we got 2 answers. The first answer was, you have to love math and science. And these were middle school and high school girls. And if you know middle school and high school girls, love isn't like pizza love, I love pizza. It's like it's Romeo and Juliet love. You have to be passionate about math and science to even consider engineering. And the second thing they said, which was even more telling, is, and I really don't know what engineering is, other than you have to love math and science. When we asked engineers what they told young people, not girls, not boys, just young people, what do you tell students who are considering engineering or you want to get them excited about engineering? And the engineers reported, you have to love math and science. And then they went on to expand, if you're the kind of person who likes to move mountains to solve a problem and you're not even sure you're going to succeed, then you might have it in you to be an engineer, because being an engineer is the hardest job ever. And so students, the messages they get, it's really hard, and you darn well better be loving math and science. And you have to be really, really good at it. And for a high school girl, that's A+ valedictorian. So we took that and we said, okay, how do we change how we're talking about engineering? And what we found is when you start saying to a young person, and the research is borne out, if you change the messages to appeal to girls, you're not putting off boys, which is fascinating. So if you say, hey, I'm an aerospace engineer, I design satellites, and a lot of people will just stop. A lot of engineers, I just design satellites. Well, I design satellites, what for? To detect drought, or to have communication systems that you're using that operate your cell phones. All of a sudden, the young women in the room, they're going to start to see the societal benefits to being an engineer. They're going to start to see what problems they can solve to help other folks. There was a great quote from, does anyone remember the quote that the Google, there was a vice president of engineering at Google who just said, we've got to stop asking kids what do they want to be when they grow up, but rather ask them what challenges and problems do they want to be part of solving? And to start getting them to think about what is it that you want to change in the world, and then say, okay, if you want to affect change in that area, what skills, what knowledge, what do you need to know to be an active player in that world? And I thought that was fascinating, kind of the next generation of that. So if you've been a volunteer and you've gone out to a classroom and you talk to kids about how you have to be great at math and science and it's really, really hard, please stop.
Not stop going to classrooms.
Not stop going to classrooms, but go into the classrooms and tell them why you love your job. What are you doing? How is that being, how is what you're doing or what your company's doing affecting change in the world and making the world a better place? Because that's ultimately what engineers do.
We had another question from the audience.
Hi, I'm Brittany from the University of Alabama in Huntsville, and we're talking about how young students don't know what engineering is, and in certain areas they've never heard of it before. I was one of those students. It took me going to Montgomery, Alabama to figure out what engineering was. But we do a lot, our student chapter does a lot of outreach in the Huntsville area, and even in the Huntsville area, which is very engineering dominated, there's still kids who don't know, and the moment we kind of mention math, what you're talking about, they freak out, they kind of be like, we don't want to do it anymore. So have you come up with a way to maybe gently introduce that math can be fun and not challenging? Because I was always told, you don't need math, Brittany, you're not going to need science. I took college classes in high school, and I wanted to take physics, and the biggest understatement of my life was my mom telling me, Brittany, you don't need physics, you're not going to use it, don't take that. So is there a way to kind of gently introduce math as being maybe fun, not hard, but cool?
Yeah.
And not freak them out at an early age.
Right. Well, having a great math teacher is key to making that happen. I'm watching my own 5th grade daughter and her relationship with math, and it ebbs and flows with their teacher. And their parents. A lot of kids, what you experienced with your mother, saying you don't need physics. Most kids, if you went to a parent-teacher conference and they said, I'm sorry, Sally's having trouble reading, every parent would be on that teacher. She needs to read, she needs to know how to, her life is ruined if she doesn't know how to read. But if that same teacher said, oh, Sally's having difficulty in math, most parents would say, oh, I wasn't good at math. That's okay. So partly it's to get to the parents and get to your, you're at a cocktail party and your friend says, oh yeah, she's having trouble with math, that's no big whoop. And you have to say, no, it is a big whoop. They're listening to their parents, and kudos to you for not listening to your mother on that particular aspect. But if we could change people's kind of fear of math and fear of engineering, and it's a tool, and that's when I talk to young girls, I say that all the time, math is just another tool that you're going to use. Science is another tool. And like most tools, there's always going to be a resource there. So if you're good at math, or if you understand the math, you understand the basics of it, there'll always be an expert that you can rely on to help you get where you need to be with that. That's what the team approach is, and we talk to kids about teaming a lot. And if they're on part of a team, everyone's going to have different skill sets and different expertise, and that team's going to come together. So it's probably not as clean an answer as you want, but I think the gentle approach is you don't have to be perfect at math, you don't even have to be great at math, you just have to, it's another piece in your toolkit that you're going to need to solve the kind of problems and to be part of the conversation that you want to be part of.
And going off of that a little bit, so I was also in a family where my mother was not good at math. And I was raised in a single parent home, and my mom was like, I'm never going to be able to help you with your math problems. So here are some nice computer games that make math fun. So it was solving problems, but using math to do that. And so my sister and I both ended up being engineers. And even going through high school and college, I was good at math, and then I hit calculus. And I got a C in calculus 1, and I'm like, I don't think I should be taking calculus. So I kept going anyway, and I ended up majoring in mathematics. And so one of the things that I try to do is whenever I go talk to Girl Scouts, go talk to schools, whoever, and somebody says, oh, well, I can't be an engineer, I'm not good at math. And I'm like, well, what math are you even in? Like, you haven't experienced it yet, you haven't been able to apply it to things that you're doing. So I kind of show them problems that they can work through and how they use math every day anyway, they just don't think about it the same way. And so when they're like, well, I got a C in algebra, I don't think I can do it. And I'm like, well, I got a C in calculus, and I majored in it. And so that's one of the things I really try to stress is you don't have to be an A+ student in every class to enjoy it. So even if they have the slightest inkling that they enjoy math, I try to push them more to it, saying, try to understand why you're doing something instead of saying 1/2 + 1/2 = 1. Okay, I know how to add fractions, I can do that. Why are you doing that? How can you put these two pieces together to get a whole? And things along those lines to get more of that understanding of what they're doing versus just the computational.
I think that goes a little bit towards the idea of engineering as a whole as well. When we do engineering, we do it as part of teams. That's the way engineering is done. And on that team, not everybody is talented at all aspects of every tool that you need to come up with this design. And so that, to me, is the opening where you say, look, you don't need to be the star calculus deriver on your engineering design team. You can be the person that does these other 14 things incredibly much better than anybody else. And to me, that might be a way of encouraging folks, you don't need to be the best at everything there is. Find some things that you're good at and maybe focus on those as part of that larger engineering team. Maybe that's a way of approaching it better at a younger age.
We have a couple of interesting questions from the web that I wanted to pose to you all. The first says, engineering is hard. That fact should not be overlooked or understated. But that said, the discipline should be promoted as tough but rewarding. Do you agree? And I wondered if that might be one way of sort of reframing what engineering sort of is, the tough but rewarding. You talked a little bit about how you've seen women respond more positively toward disciplines that are more service-oriented or helping other people, that tough but rewarding mantra could be. Sure.
I think that is a part of the challenges. As you pointed out, when you have a 5th grade or 7th, 8th grade girls, you're talking about engineering is hard. You know, you have to be very good at mathematics or sciences. And many times girls internalize that as a perfection. Understanding social science of what drives women, and the girls translate that into perfection and thinking, do I want to spend my time with my girlfriends at that age, 12, 13, 14 years old? Or do I want to work and do mathematics for 4, 5, 6 hours a week? And going back into the physics, and I remember when my daughter was sophomore, junior year in high school. And she was challenged to taking AP physics, or does she wanted to take honors physics? And she was a good student. And AP physics faculty told her, well, you have to work at least 10 hours a week. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to survive my AP classes. I think those are the kind of wrong messages that we give it to our kids, and especially whether it's working hard. But when you are enjoying what you're doing, we don't know how hard we are working. And many of us, whether it's K through 12, and I also see this at the university level, and we tell our undergraduate if they're not going to toughen up, they're not going to be a great great engineers. I remember going through in 70s, one of my faculty said, if you're not getting A's, you're going to design toilet bowls. Do you want to design toilet bowls, or do you want to design aircraft or rockets, right? I mean, these are the kind of wrong semantics that we're putting to our next generation. And now I'm at the late stage of my life, and we are using same language to our undergraduates. So we're talking about gender diversity. Many of us are talking about gender diversity here. But if you're also thinking in terms of ethnicity, low-income, inner-city, diverse students are coming into our engineering program. Unknowns to them, they were underprepared, ruefully underprepared, even though they had 90, 95 GPA within their school districts. So what do we do with these students?
That's a great question. What do we do?
Well, I think to get back to the thank you so much. Your points are spot on. And that question about hard, the engineering community leads with it. It's like this badge that people wear. It's hard. It's the hardest field there is. And if you look back in the 80s, medical schools had the same number of women, they had the same ratio of men to women that engineering schools had, more or less, and maybe even less. But now, today, 60% of medical school students are women. And engineering is still at 17, 18, 19%. Why? Because people know what doctors do. They know why they're working hard for something. People don't know why they're working hard for engineering if we open with, it's hard and you have to know math and science. Let's open with what engineering is, what it's all about. That's why it's so important for engineers to go out there and talk to kids and show kids and say, this is what I'm doing. This is the really cool things we're doing. Because once students know why they're working for something, they're going to work really hard. Law school's hard. 50% of people in law schools are women. And, minorities, medical school is hard. Most academic programs are hard. Maybe different levels. But, so I don't think that we should put it as a barrier to entry. It's another piece of the pie, but don't serve it before. Don't serve it first.
At the undergraduate level, it's almost an initiation rite. You don't get to do engineering until you've had all these physics courses and all these math courses. And maybe you'll get to design something neat by the time you're a senior, or maybe you can do some little design projects in individual courses. And so really integrating it throughout the curriculum, design process, and interesting, challenging problems that they can really put some effort into. That way they can be rewarded for thinking like an engineer and being an engineer while they're still trying to clear some of the hurdles on math and science to give them the tools they need. So yes, it is definitely language has a lot to do with it, and but also how we've structured a lot of things has followed that language. You can't be an engineer until you're good at science and math.
No. We're going to have to dig toilet holes. You only have to be good at
Let's take another question from the audience.
We see these great projects that you guys are involved, and we see them everywhere, where we're trying to bring engineering and sciences to kids and convincing them that it's fun and not necessarily hard in a bad way. But as you mentioned, and she also mentioned, how do we work that with the parents? Because I had a hard time convincing my mom that I could be an engineer just because I'm a girl. So have you thought about it? Like, how do we integrate the parents? Because kids are very easy to impress. So I'm sure that bringing a cool experiment is going to impress small kids and even middle school kids. But how do you make sure that those kids get home and they're impressed and they're excited and their parents don't just crush their dreams?
So I don't do as much with parents, but during the summers, what I was talking about with my robotics, I have an intern that's usually a high school student that comes and learns about how the programming and building of the Lego robotics kits work. And then when I have the workshop for 4th through 8th graders, they have to be there with a parent. So when they're there, it's a parent and child working together to build this robot, program it, test it, and then run the course. And so they aren't the ones that it's focused on the student, but they get to be there, watch their student experience this, and learn about it along the way as well. And so the student is the one doing the most of the work, but the parents get to do that full experience with them and see the joy that they have with creating these robots.
Does something like that work at a middle school or something like that level? Just because of the sheer number of people, I guess, is going through my brain, because we'll do sort of the same thing. We'll have our students that are college level, they will do their project, they will come in and give a presentation, and more than a few of them, we will encourage them to invite their parents in and see them give their final presentation to this room full of NASA geeks, and just show them what the kids have done. Can you do that in an elementary school or a middle school setting? I don't know if that works very well. Just a huge number of people, and I don't even know if that's doable or not. I'm not sure what the right answer is there.
It's a tough challenge. When I was at PBS, GBH, we were never successful, but we tried to get funding to do messaging campaigns to parents about the importance of engineering and science and math, and how they talk about it is important. And I've seen small scale things going on where people are now saying, hey parents, what you say matters. And actually there was a great ad last year. Verizon did those ads on television, and it was like what not to say to a girl.
Yep.
And so I think it's starting to percolate up. I know that SWE, Society of Women Engineers, does a lot of work in this area, and when they do their invent it, build it, design it, build it, invent it, I'm getting the name wrong, they invite the parents to come, and the students are in one room, just like your program. They're in one room doing but they're in one room doing it, and then the parents are in another room, and they're talking to the parents about how they can support their daughters and how they can encourage them. But it's an opt-in program.
It's an opt-in program.
And so that's, I used to have a program officer at NSF who said, I want your program to reach the kid who doesn't go to the Boys and Girls Club, she doesn't go to school. I'm like basically the kid who lives under a rock to reach that kid, and you're like, oh my goodness.
And I wonder if, getting back to talking about working with the teachers, we'll get at some of this question with the parents as well, that if students are experiencing it in the classroom and they're bringing that excitement home, and at the parents or at the student-teacher conference, parent-teacher conferences, that's being talked about, and they're getting it from the teacher that this is an important thing for your student to learn, your student is good at it, that can help get at some of the parent concerns as well. We had another question from the web, if I can log in. That's related to another topic I wanted to bring up. The question on the web says, do you think any student is, quote unquote, intelligent enough to be an engineer? And one of the questions that I wanted to pose, particularly to you, Ed, and then to you, Kurt, is what experiences or skills have your most successful students, Ed, and interns, Kurt, brought with them from their either K-12 education or from their undergraduate education that has made them into successful engineers? And is it brute intelligence, or is it some additional or other set of skills and experiences that helps them grow into a successful engineer?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say the students that I've seen do really well are the ones who have really innate, strong sense of curiosity. They're really interested in how things work, why things work, what they could do to make it better. And all I see us doing as educators is giving them the tools to allow them to do that. And also some initiative, getting out there and doing it on their own, which is why I think active learning and project-based learning, things like that, are all very important. Because there may be kids who are curious, but just haven't really gotten a chance to do anything yet. And if you give them that chance, then they find out, oh, wow, this is really neat. I had this question and I was able to answer it. And then I want to try a harder question next time, or this other cool question that I have. And so I think curiosity shouldn't be underestimated, and then just the interest in solving problems.
And I think even extending that even a little bit more, the unquenchable curiosity, and even the successful ones, they are not discouraged when they hit a brick wall, at least what initially appears to be a brick wall. Rats, I just can't get it to do this. Well, let's sit back and think about it. Is there a way around that little brick wall, kind of a thing? And the folks that are most successful, they see that as a little delay or as a little, oh, it wasn't what I planned. The ones that aren't able to accommodate these little things thrown up, they have challenges with that. The other one that I'll add in is I've noticed many of our most successful ones have this innate gift of gab. They're willing to talk, they're willing to communicate, they're willing to I can't solve this problem, let me go ask somebody who's smarter than I am to help me figure out how to go solving the problem. The ones that, let's face it, our school system kind of focuses us to be very good at what we do on our own. You can't cheat, you can't work with your neighbors unless it's a senior design class kind of a thing. It focuses us to do our own work. We get a lot of interns that we will ask them to go do a project, and they will sit there and say, Kurt, I don't know how to do supersonic flow. I can't get the answer to this for you. I don't need you to. I need you to go ask somebody who can and do that. And that's a good trait of an engineer. So somebody who's willing to go and explore these other areas, even if you do hit that brick wall, I think is another great trait as well.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to add a little story. So Dick Schwartz, when he was dean at Purdue when I was there, he remembered, they have this distinguished engineering alumni program, and these folks come back who've had great careers after graduating from Purdue, and he was trying to figure out how to predict who they would be when they graduated. And so he took a look at them, went back, looked up their records, and one guy in particular he remembered having in his class and thinking, this guy's not going anywhere, this guy's not very smart. And so, but obviously this person was very successful. And it wasn't GPA, it wasn't performance in particular courses, even courses that were relevant to that person's eventual career. It was actually the variety of activities they were involved in as an undergraduate. And it turned out marching band was a very good indicator. Interest in music, interest in art, and actually getting involved in other activities. And so I think, there's this, success kind of goes to those who are willing to follow their interests. And because if you're passionate about something, you're more likely to be successful about it. And that carries over from whatever, personal interest you have to whatever professional interest you have.
I think that's the first time I've heard the link between marching band and a successful career, and I feel like I need to send a couple of emails to my old band directors. Kristen, you wanted to dive in.
I was just going to add that one of the reasons I was hired as an engineer, even though I don't have an engineering degree, is because I learned to question. As an intern, I was given a project and I didn't quite know where to go with it, and I wasn't sure how to analyze data the way I was being asked to. So I asked around like, hey, does anybody know how to do this? I don't quite understand it. And then when they were teaching me, I was questioning why things worked the way that they did instead of just accepting it to be truth. And so even when I started full-time with NASA, I was put on a project team specifically because I was a questioner. And so by being put on that team, I had to question the way that we even do document maintenance on our aircraft. And I had to go through at least 13 aircraft, going through the maintenance documents and figuring out why we're doing things the way that we are, and why we're doing certain maintenance the way that we are, and not doing other maintenance procedures based on where we're located and where we got the planes from and things like that. And so having that ability to question is one of the biggest things that I've seen, both as being an intern and being a mentor, seeing that transition of somebody who will sit at a desk and say, well, I don't know how to do this, I don't know where to go from here, versus somebody who will go ask somebody who has that expertise how to get started, or go do the research themselves on what kind of things they can do to complete their project. It doesn't have to be a one-man show. It's all about, I mean, we have different expertise where we work. Every place people work for a reason.
I wanted to, we have a question here.
I ask a question. Bob Skelton, UCSD. I used to tell my wife when I retired that I would just go teach math and science in high school. And she's also a teacher, and she would say, no, you're not qualified. And one of the problems we have in high school has been said here several times, is that your first exposure to math more or less decides in your mind whether you're good at it or not. And so some students label themselves as not good in math and science, not because there's a genetic problem, but because they have a poor first exposure to the subject. And so I think one of the problems in high school is to modify. So I cannot even tutor the high school students without the teacher being present in the room, right? So I can't even save them any money or help the tutoring. So I think something is wrong with the way we certify teachers for high school and the way we waste the resources of retired people in this country who still have a lot to offer, but there are too many bars to let them do that. And I often give talks to high schools about, so you think you want to be an engineer, getting ready to go to college. And I just explain to them what are the mistakes that freshmen, in my experience, usually make. They don't know how to read a book. They'll read a book, say a math and science book, there's a concept, and then there's an example. And the student will read the concept and read the example and follow the author's solution, step 1, step 2, step 3, yeah. I could do that. So I try to convince them that you deceive yourself into thinking you could do that, because it's much easier to follow the logic of someone else than to generate logic yourself. So the way you should read a book is read the concept, read the example problem, but cover up the solution, get out a piece of paper, and try to answer the question yourself. Suppose you get stuck, you don't give up right away, you've got to plow the ground before you plant the seed. So you generate a specific question, and this comes to the point that's been made now 3 times, curiosity. You have to have a question before you can receive an answer that's going to go into permanent memory. Otherwise, it's just a shallow thing that's forgotten tomorrow. So I think part of the problem is not just motivating the kids to do this or do that, but teaching students how to learn. Because once they learn how to learn, it's self-motivating. So I'll ask for your comments.
By the way, I'll mention that I can teach freshmen, but I can't teach anyone in high school. I can teach graduate students, but I can't teach high school students. And right, I'm not allowed to, yes. But it's also kind of interesting that, I got my PhD. I had no training in education whatsoever, and they turned me loose in my first undergraduate class with 250 students. It was a bad experience for everybody. Now, I learned on the job, so there's no training for education for people who go into higher education, and people who don't have an education credential cannot teach in high school. So you're right, but I think, and we've tried various things that we thought might work. So we have these VIP teams that are composed of undergrads who actually get along pretty well with high school students still. They relate to them much better than I could. And so we've actually added high school students and high school teams to VIP teams. And that works really well, except that there's a teacher development aspect to that because the teacher wants to play a role in it, but maybe the problem isn't exactly what the teacher is familiar with, and you don't want the teachers feel uncomfortable when they're put in the position of not knowing. And we try to encourage them to say, look, I don't know the solution. In fact, I tell the students on my own team, if I knew what I was doing with this problem, it wouldn't be research. That's why I'm here. And so I think bringing in people who are retired in that fashion, some type of organization behind it as opposed to an individual going in and trying to do it on their own, because they would have all sorts of concerns about security of the student, your competence. They don't know you really well, so they don't know what you would do. But if there was some outside organization that a lot of retired people could get involved with, and that approach this in an organized and scalable way, I think you could have a big impact.
I wanted to pivot to a slightly different topic and ask you all how engineering careers have changed over the years, and whether you think we're keeping up with how we train engineers in order to prepare them to really dive into some of the 21st century challenges and careers. And I wondered what you thought the sort of ideal engineering education looks like in the future, whether it's in the classroom or out at the K-12 level or undergraduate level. What does the future look like to you?
Well, I'd say things change so much faster nowadays. And you can blame it all on Moore's Law if you like, with the computing and networking and communications revolution, which is still affecting us. And Moore's Law is still in effect today after, 30, 40 years. And I think that's accelerated everything. You have companies that pop up, do great things, disappear, merge, go out of business. So the notion that you can graduate with a degree in engineering and have a stable job with GE or somebody else, and you'll retire from that same company that you joined, when you were in your 20s, that's pretty much gone, because even divisions get sold off to different people. And, or some technology comes along, some disruptor, whether it's Uber or somebody else comes along and potentially puts all taxi drivers out of business. So I think things really are changing much faster than they used to change and will continue to accelerate. So having our undergrads experience, and I can really only answer for the undergrad level here, having our undergrads experience how to be independent problem solvers on their own and to be active and independent learners on their own is probably the best thing we can do for them. That was actually our goal in starting the VIP program, because we had noticed that the undergraduate engineering curriculum was so full of engineering science that they didn't even have time to tinker on their own. Most of us as undergrads, if you're old enough, I had really crazy projects on the side because I had time to do it. And now the curriculum is so demanding that you can't do it. So VIP was actually an effort to build that type of thing into the curriculum and give them credit for it. So encourage them to be independent. And the earlier you can get them, you can start with them on that. Start with them as freshmen. I really want them to realize that, okay, college is different. It's not a 5th year of high school where I am yet again sitting in a chair listening to people lecture to me, teaching them to approach life sitting down. we want them to get up and get out there and do things that are of interest to them and a benefit to them and other people. And I think if you can do that so they're independent and can stand on their own 2 feet, can learn on their own, then you've really equipped them for the future.
At least for me, it does seem to me that even the last 10 or 15 years, the efforts of folks here in the panel are getting through, because at least from our perspective at NASA Ames, we do see a lot more students that have hands-on experience. Any number of my interns show up and they've already written code for Arduinos and all kinds of stuff, and my goodness, 15 years ago, nobody had done anything like that. They were showing up right out of school and that was it. So I think in some ways there are great strides being made, kind of a thing. And it almost has to be, because technology is changing so quickly. They need to be on top of all that stuff because it's where everything is going right now. I think we're in this kind of this vicious circle where as we develop more technology, we're obligated to teach it to our folks at a younger and younger age so that when they graduate, they're ready to go on to that next step. And that, I think, is a challenge. And I can see where a lot of schools are pressed to go into 5-year engineering degrees. I mean, it's hard to get all of the things in 4 years. I don't know how you do any better than that.
I would say at the K-12 level, what would be interesting is I don't think we're prepared. I think the engineering design process and project management offer a roadmap and a way of solving problems and thinking about the world that should be expanded beyond engineering. And there was a wonderful op-ed piece in the New York Times yesterday about the perspective of what does the design thinking help you do and how does it help you approach life. And I would love to see more of that project-based learning and more of that engineering design process start right in pre-K, getting kids to really start, what is the problem they want to solve? What are the constraints? And they'll be able to do that whether they go on to be on fashion police or they whatever interest they have. That kind of thinking, that systems thinking, that engineering design process will carry them forward. And I think as the world is changing, you hear all the time that the K-12 classroom hasn't changed since the 1800s. You're still books, it's still paper, it's still pencil. There's a little bit of computer, there's a little bit of this, but it hasn't changed enough to keep up with the demands.
And the National Academy has actually been trying to help address this. They have something called the Grand Challenge Scholars Program. And I have a PDF of that, if you could show that up on the screens. And at least 100 universities have signed on to this, each with their own solution to trying to implement it. The goal is to get students from the time they set foot on campus to be, no, not that one. It's a PowerPoint. I think it's called NAE Grand Challenges. Well, I'll keep talking while they try to find it. That's it.
There it is.
So Grand Challenge Scholars Program. And it's, the point about the future is made right there. So we'll require engineers to shape public policy, transfer technical innovation to the marketplace, inform and be informed by social science and the humanities. Because you're attacking problems now that are global in scale, whether it's global warming or what's the impact of AI going to be. There's a lot of debate about that right now. And these are all things that our students really can be thinking about at any age. You can pose the question and let them start thinking about it, and help them, give them the tools to address the problems. And if you go to the next page in that PowerPoint, I guess I have it. Whoop. Sorry.
Both did it.
Those are the 14 Grand Challenge areas that the National Academy picked. And those will change with time, obviously. Hopefully we'll solve all of them and then there won't be any more. But I'm sure that's never going to be the case. But I think you can get an idea that if you presented a list like that to K through 12 students, they could figure out which ones they're interested in. And there's no reason they can't start reading about the problem and learning about it and thinking about it. So just turning them loose. Getting them to trust their own instincts and to be willing to talk about what their interests are and to do something about it, I think is the most crucial thing we can do for them.
And to underscore that point, we had a young girl in our program last year, an 8th grader, Leah. She was being interviewed by the press about why she was involved in Future City, and she said, "Why wouldn't I be thinking about these problems? when I've got to start thinking about them now, because we need clean water and we need energy and we need transportation, and I'm going to be around for a long time, so we got to be solving these problems now. You know, I loved it. Why wouldn't I be thinking?
Yeah.
And they're ready. They're ready.
That's great. One of the topics that's come up, I think from almost everybody on the panel, is the idea of mentors and role models. And we know that mentors and role models play an incredibly important role for students across all of the STEM disciplines. So I wondered if you guys could tell us what you think makes a good mentor or role model. And I thought I might turn to Kirsten first and ask how mentoring impacted your career path, and whether you're bringing any lessons from your experience as a mentee to how you are running some of the education programs and mentoring that you're doing now.
So mentoring has been a huge factor in my life, starting from when I was a child, with my mom saying, hey, I know that we're not good at this in our family, so here's a way we can overcome that, was kind of the initial intro into math for me. And growing up, I was in Girl Scouts, so I had mentors through Girl Scouts, learning about different kinds of things that I could do for careers, even though engineering did not come up at that point. And then I was in Big Brothers Big Sisters program, which is a program for families who only have one parent growing up. And so I got paired with my big sister when I was 8 years old, and I'm still really good friends with her. And she taught me about how you should always try things, because you never know if you're gonna like them or not. Try new things all the time. And she would always take me to restaurants of food I've never heard of, and just got me to try things that I wouldn't have done otherwise. And I've kept that theme in my life growing up. And so when I was in college, I had decided I wanted to be a teacher. And so I was going through all the classes for it, and I double majored with education and mathematics. And then when an internship opportunity came up, one of my professors was like, hey, you might be interested in this. It's an internship for future teachers who are in some kind of a STEM field to get research experience. And I happened to get placed at NASA, used to be Dryden, now Armstrong. And I fell in love there. And my mentor in the program was an engineer, and he questioned why I wanted to be a teacher and why I was going through life the way that I was, and asked if I had never thought about engineering. And my response was, well, engineering's hard. I don't really know what it consists of, and I don't think I could do it. I don't think I'm smart enough. And so with that, I went through, and I was in an engineering position for my internship. I just didn't think of it that way, because I was enjoying what I was doing and I was learning new things, and I was like, oh, this can't be engineering, because I like doing it, and it's fun, and it's not super hard. I mean, I have to do a lot of work to get the answer, but I don't think of that as hard. I think of hard things as things I can't do. And so then he kind of introduced me to more and more engineers at the center, because apparently he knew I was going to be an engineer even though I didn't. And so I came back for a second internship with the same program, and I met people in the hallways, and I ended up meeting somebody, just chatting with them while I was waiting for somebody to get off the phone. And I was talking to him about why I was considering engineering now. And so he ended up asking me to bring him my resume, and found out he was a branch chief of one of the engineering branches at NASA. And so I started full-time 2 weeks after that internship ended, but I didn't know that that was what I had wanted to do until I learned about what it meant to do that. And so I got lucky by getting placed there and having an awesome mentor who kind of walked me through the different things that engineering consists of. But I mean, I was in the same boat, that I thought it was hard, and I thought it was not something that somebody who grew up where I did, in a low poverty level, not having both parents at home, being female, not being the strongest person at math, didn't know that that was something that I could do. And And with being at NASA now, I've already gotten awards for some of the work that I've done, and I'm currently now going to grad school for my aerospace engineering degree. And it's just amazing how influential mentors can be, whether it's just helping them figure out what this, I mean, if as a mentor now, I try to help figure out what they want to do and lead them to those directions where they're passionate for. Not necessarily, well, I think I could do this, because it's something that it kind of leans toward, oh, you like math, but I don't know what to do with it, so I'll be a teacher. So it's just really interesting how influential mentors can be.
Kurt, you run an internship program. What makes a good mentor?
Well, I just think it's very challenging to be a mentor for sure, because you do have the ability to influence a person's career, life, a lot of them as a matter of fact. So there's a lot of responsibilities associated with being a mentor, because you may have student X who is thinking of being a teacher, but you know what, I see that little spark in there. No, we don't want her being a teacher. She's better suited to be this instead. That's difficult, because you got to make sure that you're not steering them in a completely wrong direction. My own example, I've had 1 or 2 students who came to NASA Ames as engineers, and at the end of the summer, we had pretty much both agreed, this just isn't for you. This is just not the way you want to go. There are some other careers that are a better option for you, and that's a hard decision to make. I don't want to see people leaving the career field, for gosh sakes. But I think what makes a good mentor is somebody who is aware of where the mentee, the person that they're working with, you have to be aware. You have to be very aware of what they're doing in life and where they see things. Quite often, mentor-mentee relationship is somebody who's significantly older than the mentee. And so you do have some wisdom, you do have some experiences that may be useful, but you sort of have to ration them a little bit. Sometimes you need the person to find out on their own, yeah, this isn't gonna work. Okay, I'll let you go try that. I'm not gonna hurt yourself. You're not gonna be allowed to hurt yourself. We're not gonna let you squander taxpayer money. We're not gonna go embarrass the organization. But absolutely, I am gonna let you fail when you're trying to do this as a means of growth and deciding, is this what you wanna do? But it's a big step. One of the things I do is I help teach mentors at Ames. And it's funny, we get a lot of mentors that think that being a mentor is excellent. I got a student to come in and do some work for me, kind of a thing. Yay, I got an extra worker bee, and that's pretty much it. So they will talk to the person once every other week, and that's it. And boy, that in my brain, that's not what a mentor is. The mentor has to be there daily, hourly, available to give the person those that kind of inputs, because there are going to be lots of questions, and some of them easy, some of them not so easy. I'd be interested, all the mentors that you've had, I suspect you interacted with them pretty frequently, you know, like we know we're at NASA and things.
Yeah, my second internship, I actually had a mentor along those lines where they were kind of out of pocket, they were gone a lot, I didn't see them a whole lot, so I actually went out and sought my own mentors because I had already been there for a summer.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I know I'm not going to learn this myself, so let me go get a support group where I can.
Yeah, you're kind of defeating the purpose if you aren't there to be a mentor. You can you can claim to be on a name, but you got to be there to give those little insights. And some of it is technical, some of it is career. Others is just, you know, little business insights. Are you sure you want to go bring that problem up with the boss right now? He's having a bad day right now, and sometimes you don't want to bring up those kind of issues now. That's something you mentor, whether it's engineering or not, but that's part of one of the jobs of being a mentor. And I will say from lots of experience, a lot of people, they decide, yeah, I've tried being a mentor and I just don't want to do that. It's not for me. That bums me out, but oh well.
But I was going to just say, in our in our call to talk about what we were going to talk about, we did talk about the difference between mentors and role models. And so mentor is, you know, you've got to be there, you're there all the time, it's more of an intensive experience. But every single person in this room is a role model. You're all interacting with kids, you're all having those opportunities to talk to parents and students and teachers about what is engineering. There's a fascinating study that found that communities that had more women who were visible in STEM fields, so if they had a high population of women or just visible women who, you know, identified, I'm a physicist, I'm an engineer, I'm a mathematician, more of the female, they had a higher percentage of girls taking physics in high school. So if you're out there talking to kids and you're out there just saying who you are and what you do, and you never know where those 1 or 2 minute conversations are going to happen. We often hear, introduce a girl to engineering day this year. We're focusing on role models and the importance of role models and asking people to sign up to be role models. And just kind of make that commitment to be a role model. And we send out tips and ideas of what you can do and how you can do that. But you know, those interactions where you go out and you do an activity with a kid, you don't know where you're hitting that person. Like the person you had that hallway conversation and he said, bring your resume in. And, you know, so just being open to sharing your experiences, I think, is so important.
And did you have anything you wanted to add on this?
Well, on mentoring within the VIP teams, because we've integrated them from sophomores up to PhD students, there's a sociologist we've been working with, and we actually looked at the social network interactions that was formed within teams and between teams. And for many of the undergraduates, it's the first time they talk with people from another year, and definitely the first time they'd ever really talk with graduate students or faculty. And so by the time they're ready to graduate, they actually knew what graduate students did. For most undergraduates, it's kind of a mystery. And they understand, you know, what faculty research is about, whereas most of them didn't know that before. But they're also, the interactions within the team, they realize they're joining a community and they're not out there alone. You know, this notion that engineering is something that you do in your office with the door closed by yourself, you know, all day. That's not the way it actually works. You know, you're solving problems with a group, you're sharing expertise and sharing ideas. And so watching the technical exchange within students across, you know, boundaries of years, across boundaries of gender, you know, ethnicity, and even interactions between teams that were created because of that. Turns out there's a lot of project management information exchanged by students who know each other from different teams. And so I think the more of a community we can create, you know, the type of mentoring that you know, Kirsten's had, you know, that she's part of a community that has, and one of the goals of that community is to provide mentoring. And if you're in a community like that, that's the best experience, I think, for people who are either deciding a career or starting out in a career.
I love that you each described very different kinds of mentoring and role models. You know, you talked about a very personal experience, and Kurt, you talked about a very professional experience. You talked about role models, that one-on-one interaction that's not necessarily in a professional capacity, maybe not in a long-term capacity, and you gave some great examples of peer mentoring. And so I think that it works across the spectrum, really. We have just a few minutes left, and so I actually wanted to pose to all of you a question about what recommendations you have for this audience, both here and watching on the web, for how they can get involved and what kinds of things they can do to strengthen engineering education overall and inspire the next generation of engineers.
So one thing that I would say is, I don't know what kind of roles you guys are in, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a parent, whether you're a student, whether you're in the engineering field right now, is go into a classroom, talk to them, see if they have career days, and engage them instead of just inspire them. Don't just stand up there and talk with them, but have them build something. It can be something quick. It can be you have marshmallows and you build a little spacesuit for it and see if it can go in a bell jar to take the pressure out, see if it helps that with your little pressure suit. There's so many activities that you can do with students that are quick, that are fun, that you probably already have half the materials for. And it's really just getting students interested in the entire engineering process versus just saying engineering is hard, engineering is math and science. Engineering is figuring out solutions to problems. And if they're able to do that at a young age, I think it really helps. And actually, in the back of the room, I brought some flyers that have some websites to lesson plans you can do with students and things like that. So I just really think it's important to start at a young age and get them interested in solving problems.
Yeah, I will reiterate that. just about every school out there is desperate for people to come in and talk to the kids about various careers. I was amazed in my local hometown. I just happened to swing by a school one day and found somebody in there and said, would you be interested if I wanted to come and chat a little bit about what it's like working at NASA? And their mouths drop open. We'd love it. Nobody ever comes and does that. I guarantee every one of you in this audience, you'll find just one or more schools that would love to have you come talk to them and get the word out. I think that's really, really important. And the other thing, from my perspective is, if you are a student or you know a student or you can encourage a student, go get them to get as much experience as they possibly can before they decide they're going to go into engineering. If they are in college, if they are in high school, encourage them to go do an internship. There are high school internship programs out there. So in addition to all of the things you can do in middle school and high school as part of the curriculum, maybe go get them to do some extracurricular things that show that they like engineering, or at least investigate that field. I think that would be really helpful.
And to add on that real quick, I also brought flyers for our NASA internships in the back.
And if you're thinking, oh, I don't want to go to the school, I don't want to find those kids, can't they come to me? Wouldn't that be great? A lot of times your companies or your engineering society has relationships already with those schools, with those after-school groups. So go to your human resources or go to your engineering outreach folks, and ask around in your company, hey, are we doing anything for Engineers Week? Are we involved in Girl Day? I bet a lot of your companies, if you work for Boeing or Northrop or Lockheed or Airbus or most of these companies, you are involved. There's people in your organizations that have these relationships with these schools already. Go and volunteer. And NASA has amazing activities. We have Discover E also has great activities, and we also have a quick online training. If you're thinking, what did Thea talk about how messages, what am I supposed to say or not say? We have quick trainings called Talking Effectively to Students or Doing Hands-on Activities with Students. How do you weave those messages in when you're doing the activity? How do you extend the activity and get the engineering in there? And how do you get your own job in there so you can talk to students? So all that is there. There's lots of support for you out there.
Ed,
Yeah.
any recommendations?
Sure, I would say to everybody out there, this is an engineering problem. How do we improve engineering education, and how do we solve the social challenge of getting more people interested in engineering? And if all of us start thinking about that, and whether you're a mentor or a mentee, start talking with people, find groups that are of interest to you, that you want to join, and then brainstorm ways to improve engineering education and improve increase the number of students going into engineering. And think of it as a problem that you have to solve, and don't expect to get it right the first time. It takes a lot of effort, and especially the scalability issue. Because I think individuals can make a huge difference one-on-one, but there are millions of kids out there that we need to reach somehow. And that takes a lot of thinking about how to do that. And so I'm hoping that somebody in the audience today, whether they're on the web or in here, comes up with some great ideas.
And with that, I want to thank all of our panelists for a very stimulating conversation. Thank the organizers for putting this panel together. I think it's fantastic that at a meeting like this, we're talking about education. We're talking about what we need to do to train future engineers, whether they start as mathematicians, whether they start as sociologists, or whether we get them from age 5 building their popsicle stick bridges. I think there are a lot of opportunities to improve and a lot of opportunities for people here to get involved. So thank you all for attending. Thanks for watching us on the web, and have a great afternoon.